Okay, so during my college years, I was dating a guy that was super into D&D. After some time, he invited me to play in his group. I was kind of a nerdy person myself, although I've never played D&D, but was thrilled to try. He helped me roll my first character, a light-hearted halfling fighter. So, here's the thing. This guy was currently doing his postdoc. Everyone at that table was involved with his work in some way. We had two guys with a PhD in political science, one dude with a PhD in economics, and one dude with a PhD in public administration, with another with a PhD in psychology. And then me, the only person without a graduate degree at that table. I thought the game was going to be some simple afternoon light fun, but it was a political nightmare. I joined the middle of the campaign and I couldn't understand what side was fighting who in that world map of theirs, for what resource, because of what house, because of what law Parliament had passed that year, who was filibustering who, and who were the veto players, and whatever. They all spoke in technical jargon, so I couldn't understand half of what was discussed. I ended up feeling super dumb, never played with them again. Took me years to get back into D&D. You know what? If these guys want to enjoy a complex political thriller with tons of political jargon, that's awesome, great for them. But, if you're inviting someone who is not in the know about that sort of thing, you might want to, tell them about what you're doing to avoid something like that. Let me tell you a tale of the first two sessions of the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game I'm running. Let's clear the air that yes, the memes can be true, and yes, this game can bring out the worst people out of their hidey holes. But most of my group are good players, with actually interesting stories to them. And then, there's this one player that almost got murked session uno, and then got the whole party in trouble in session 2. Our cast will be me as the storyteller, the La Sombra French resistance fighter, the Venture businessman with more money than God, the Grongle prima donna that owns a brothel/nightclub, and the Kadif former Cholo gangster. Kadif being our problem player in this story. There are two other characters who will be mentioned in passing, but they aren't affected as much by the proceedings. They'll be just referred to as the brothers. The story starts with each player getting a personalized letter from a mysterious benefactors, asking them to come to the North Carolina Research Triangle. Due to a major incident, the benefactor thinks putting new players on the board might stabilize all the discourse that is going on. La Sombra is tasked by his maker to go because of a debt. Ventrue goes because of the possibility of grabbing power. Gangrel is there to hide away from her abusive Sure? What's a Sure? That treats her like a doll. And Kadif is there to get info on the killer of his dead brother. Now, for those who don't know, La Sombra, Ventrue, Kadif, and Gangrel are the types of vampires you can play, each having their own powers and weaknesses that make them interesting. And the older a vampire is, the stronger their vampire powers are. Keep that in mind because it gets brought up. The vampire party find themselves getting picked up from the airport in a limbo. Gangrel is already in it since she got there a year ago and has been kept in a safe house. The second people to show up are La Sombra and Ventrue, since La Sombra works as a sort of bodyguard for Ventrue. The brothers come in and they do their thing. Then, Kadif comes in. Now, he was made as a pretty brash and combative character, spec to the 9 as someone that could dish out a lot of damage at level 1. But this is where things go south. Kadif proceeds to walk up to the valet and point a gun towards him, asking what he knows about his brother and his killer. Now, I don't know what he was thinking since this guy was clearly just some driver, not the benefactor, and why it was a good idea to pull a gun out at an airport. Now, La Sombra and Ventrue, they need to be quick, blocking this view outside of normal people, but this is where the first instance of simping happens. The Gangrel, the only woman in our player group, proceeds to try and calm the Kadif down, and she was about to make a roll for it, but then this.
He does it, seeing this beautiful woman in the limo.
The flags have been raised, boys. This was an utter grinding halt to all the aggression, and this isn't the first time this happens. With a jarring intro out of the way, they get into the limo and are driven off to what seems to be the middle of the Research Triangle, where what seems to be a private psychiatric facility lays. They are led to a pair of double doors that bars off the owner's office. Inside, they find an older gentleman with wizened hair, a tweed suit, and black veins in his hands. He welcomes them all to his home and is glad to see that they all got his letters. going into further detail on how he needs them to find some research that all the head honcho vampires were working on that disappeared, after something/someone killed them all in a bloody display. Triangle is split up between 3 cities, Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and Durham. Now that each of the leaders were dead, Vampire Society is in a tizzy. The group was asking questions and trying to get a better grasp of the situation, except our boy the Caitiff. Caitiff proceeds to stomp his way to the old man and draw his gun on him, getting up in his face.
Listen here, you're going to tell me why my brother's killer is, or I'm going to make you see the Holy Ghost.
He was going for this religious shtick? I don't know. Okay, make me a willpower test. He gives me a weird look as I ask him this and gives the roll, netting him 4 successes in total, but that was not enough. You feel your body move of its own accord, Locke stepping back to the only open seat available next to Gangrel. This is where they learn that they were dealing with a very old vampire. The Caitiff tries to protest this whole thing when the Gangrel starts to chastise him for trying to, start things. He clams up and acts like a whipped dog as the quest giver gives them lore and such. Everyone is interacting and the brothers are making comments about robbing people in suits. Of course, this causes the Caitiff to chomp at the bit, saying that his character is motioning at the quest giver to the brothers as if they should kill him.
Man, let's kill this guy. He's not telling us any information despite him saying he had it.
He proclaims he gets back on his feet. 3 things happen in this moment. Ventrue is trying to do the businessman talk-down thing to get this idiot to calm down. La Sombra, on the other hand, is getting ready to stealth kill him because he sees the Caitiff as a huge compromise to clearing his debt, but before any of that could happen, the old man finally stops being nice. In a blink of an eye, he appears in front of the Caitiff and grabs his face in his hands. An encroaching madness invades his mind, telling him to shut up and stop acting like a child instead of the creature of the night that he is. His point made once more, the old man lets go and proceeds to give the player characters their lodgings. Ventrue, his corporate skyscraper, La Sombra, his row house, the brothers a ranch, and the Gangrel her club. Of course, the Caitiff begs the Gangrel to live with her, offering to work as a bouncer. The Gangrel's player, being a tad too nice at character creation, did offer to let him stay there, so the character agrees as well. And thus, the first major step to a major shit show is born. The second session started a week in-game after the meeting with the benefactor. Each player got their situation together, and so far everything started out smooth, compared to the first one being a sandpaper session. La Sombra had been contracted by one of the need-to-know people in Chapel Hill, earning the job of taking out a pompous mafia family that she sees as an eyesore. Ventrue got a visit by a vampire mage that used to own his skyscraper but gave it to the old man to repay a debt. His side quest was to look into the trouble in Little China. The brothers have werewolf neighbors. And finally, we find Gangrel and Caitiff getting a personal visit from the impromptu leader of Durham, another one of the districts. Did you hear that record scratch yet? Because this is where things go from 0 to 100 in one night. Now, Durham is Anarch country, one of the factions of Vampire Society. Currently, the leader is masterfully settled in as police chief of the city. This man has a presence in both local government and leading the vampires of the town with an iron fist. It's no surprise that our problem player Caitiff has a bit of an issue with the police, and one of his flaws is that the police don't like him in kind. Our boy comes up to this man, who stands close to 7 feet tall and looks like Arnie during his Conan career, and tries to start beef.
Damn, I didn't know pigs were allowed in my ladies' club.
He said something to that approximation. The chief looks down at him and just sighs, informing him that he's just making a house visit because his therapist, the old man, asked him to. So, could he kindly take him to the actual owner of the club?
Alright, but if you try to do anything fishy, you're going to meet the Holy Ghost.
With that, him and the chief reach the private floor where Gangrel and her familiar live. She's currently feeding a large 8-foot-long albino alligator named Bambino, a mix of meat and her blood when they arrive. The chief is just ignoring the angry, wannabe gangster behind him as he exchanges words with Gangrel. Doing the greetings and welcomes of the city, Gangrel is trying to get some good stuff out of the chief. So the story progresses and the chief is let out by the Caitiff, who acts like a spoiled child, but actually admits that he respects the chief for putting up with his attitude. The next night is the first time I make the players roll to see how hungry they are. Everyone except Kadif passes, so the rest get one extra hunger hole, yet he is still on one himself. Fun fact, in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, they added a mechanic where you pick out how your character feeds. Lasombra has to eat the organs of his victims, Ventrue has to drink the blood of his business staff, Gangrel feeds from those she sleeps with, and finally, Kadif feeds from animals. Dogs, to be precise.
Yeah, I'm hungry. Let's find a chihuahua to eat.
He said this out loud, in front of normal people. Big thing in this game, normal people aren't supposed to know you're a vampire. Things like vampire hunters come around if that rumor gets spread. Before all this began, Gangrel had wrote up a letter for courtier members, the party members, and was having her most trusted working girls deliver it. Of course, the girl's first stop is Kadif, and she hands him the letter a few minutes after his first mistake.
Dang, I didn't know my mistress was working with something like this.
He then states that he leans over the girl and looks at her.
Do you know what we are? Me and Gangrel, my sire, are vampires.
This whole thing is having me cringe to the point that I have to turn my mic off and just scream, only to turn it back on and explain to the player that you aren't supposed to do any of this. And I think this was a heat of the moment thing mixed with the simpage going on that he called Gangrel his maker, which is also just not true. I had the girl play it off, not knowing what any of that meant and having to deal with Johns on the daily, so proceeds to continue her delivery. Not understanding what he had just done, the player asked me something that just snowballed into disaster.
I want to find a dog to eat. Can I roll to find an animal shelter that's open?
I inform him that it's like right in the middle of the night. No shelters are open. He still proceeds to roll to find something to eat. Bestial success. His monster is present in the roll, pushing him to go on based instinct. I inform him that he goes around the neighborhood and finds some stray dog in an alley. Now here's a question for you. What does he do with this information? Does he A. take the dog back to the club to privately drain it? B. Look around to see if anyone was around before going to eat it? Or C. Decide that he doesn't really need to eat and maybe secure him a safer way to get food? Or secret option D. YOLO. He proceeds to throw caution to the wind and proceeds to just attack the dog. And he does say he's a messy eater. All of this carnage is met with a passing couple coming across him and screaming about what he's doing. Not one to let things go in wasted, he proceeds to pull his infamous Holy Ghost line and use it to attempt to intimidate them with it to forget everything what they have seen. He even showed off his vampire ability to make his eyes go beast-like to get a bonus. He rolls. Bestial failure. He crit fails and the beast within exposes itself in full glory. He does succeed in intimidating the poor couple, but he fails to see the friend with a smartphone, recording everything. He has exposed the beast within. He has been caught bloody and on camera. He does the one smart thing. He runs. Mind you, I am rolling to see if NPCs are catching up to him. Yes, I seem like a jerk at this point, but I don't fudge rolls. He is caught nearly immediately by a police officer on a bike. Now, I did roll to see who this police officer was, and lo and behold, it's the chief's second-in-command, another need-to-know NPC the party was told of. She informs him to freeze and get on his knees. He begins to argue, but he sighs and does so. It seemed like he was actually doing something smart for a change, but then he gives me a look that said otherwise. As the second came up, he smelled the air and growled. You're a vampire, aren't you? Come on, we gotta get you to the chief. Hearing the name of his hated Chad chief, he begins to feign his compliance.
Okay, officer, but I just want you to know, I'm not the only one dying today.
This starts an epic fight between a level 1 vampire and a police officer with status. She proceeds to use her vampire powers to stun his brain and paralyze him by putting a stake in his heart. The other players were going wild. Lasombra, who is my roommate in real life, is screaming his head off in his room because this whole situation has taken like 80% of our playtime, and he hasn't been able to do anything. The brothers are laughing their heads off, and Gangrel is hiding her internal cringing the best she can, and Ventrue is just slamming his head on his desk. Cut to the club, where Gangrel is informed the chief is here. He looks mad, and he tells her that your guy, Messed up. Get in the car. They proceed to drive to the station's underground parking lot where they find Kadif in front of 12 vampire cops bound and gagged. The chief lists the sins of the past few hours and how there is going to be a hell of a lot of things to clear up. What does he have to say for himself? They ungag him and he just goes,
"You don't know who you're messing with. Me and my party, we're gonna take control. We're gonna kill the Baron."
The player has not been paying attention. The chief, who's standing right there, is the Baron. He had just dragged his party into a massive crapshoot along with him. Just before he is about to get ashed in front of a pissed-off vampire tank, Gangrel makes her plea. Both myself and her are not wanting to kill a character in the second session of the game, but I can't just let this go without a single consequence. Alright, I won't ash this guy, but your whole party owes me a major boon. He is never allowed back in my city or he will be ashed, and you are going to drink my blood for a bond. Major boons in Vampire the Masquerade are no joke. You gotta do anything for someone, even if it costs your life, and a blood bond is even worse. Pretty much, if you drink another vampire's blood, you become addicted to it. It mentally changes your disposition about the person you drank from. And if you do it 3 times, you're hooked and permanently devoted. Because of Gangrel's background, this was the worst thing that could have happened to her. To escape the iron grip of her maker only to be bound by another guy was something she would never let go of. She takes this deal. Kadif freaks out, dropping the N-word a couple of times in character. The group meets. La Sombra tries and fails to stake Kadif, and it is decided to hide him at the ranch the brothers own. And at the end of the session, I was informed that Gangrel has put a hit out on Kadif with La Sombra, and now I have to wait to see what unfolds. This story is still ongoing, and I even record the sessions, hoping to start this up as a podcast. Well, not if the story is this kind of quality. And I still plan to do it, even though the second session is going to be highly edited. Hopefully you will all find it and see where it all goes. Till next time, friends, I hope you all enjoyed my hectic story so far. It certainly was something. I mean, there is so much to go over here. I'm not going to cover the relationships and the simping because we've done that 1,000 times before. Don't let out-of-game relationships affect your in-game characters as much as possible. That's the gist of it. But the real problem here is that this guy fundamentally does not understand the type of game he's playing. Now, even in Dungeons & Dragons, this behavior would be crazy. But in Vampire the Masquerade, it's insane. That game, from what I understand, is all about starting at the bottom and working your way up the food chain. So immediately trying to become this mega boss is stupid. It's all about the steady progression. Not just in Vampire the Masquerade, but in many other TTRPG games. This kind of alpha male murder hobo behavior is going to screw over the rest of the group. It can really ruin the fun when you're trying to manage some idiot who's going around pretending that he's the most powerful member of the world when that simply isn't the case. And if the DM tries to cater that sort of thing, allows this edgelord to become the most powerful person in the world automatically just to sate their hunger for self-importance, well, that can ruin a campaign really quickly. So yeah, don't do that either. The best thing to do is to take this player aside and talk to them. It's shocking that the DM hasn't done that yet, because that's honestly the most important thing and the most helpful thing you can do. If you guys enjoyed this episode of RPG Horror Stories and want to let me know, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more episodes of this series, as well as my other content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Blood Pact to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.